Thanks everyone for joining us today. We organize this meetup every other week. Almost sometimes we miss the deadline and we can't organize it, but we try our best to organize it every other week. Tom, we have him here today. Kim unfortunately couldn't make it today, and I. We are very passionate about having you joining us and learning about how to use data or data science to push your business further ahead, how to monetize data, how to monetize your information or the data you gather and make them information. We're sponsored by Integrity, Startup Grind, and Founders Network, and Robust Choice. I'm coming from Integrity. All we do is helping people to ask the right questions and answer them using data. Maybe Tom, you can give you a little bit of introduction of yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm a kind of a long-time data and marketing specialist. Worked with data most of my career, but up until probably the last 5 to 6 years, like a lot of marketers, frustrating having to deal with gatekeepers to get access to that data and use it to improve your campaigns. But with all the improvements in technology, as well as just the smarts that we've seen over the last kind of 4 to 6 years, with education across the market, everyone can be a data specialist these days. And we started these sessions really to kind of share that knowledge and really help those in business, regardless of where, what your field is, whether you're a data scientist or a CEO, really look at ways of using data in ways that help to improve your business. And we're fortunate today to have Michael Schneider, who's joining us originally from Germany, but in Ottawa with his family. I met Michael about 2 years ago at SAS North at a panel we were on together in the data space. And Michael was great enough to kind of share his experience there. And we've asked him to come back. Michael's been at Shopify, I believe, for about 3 years now, since he moved to Canada from Germany with his wife, and now has a little girl. One of the things that I like about Michael and just Shopify in general is just their kind of forward thinking when it comes to not only data, but just the way that they deal with business in general. I haven't told Michael this, but I'm also a customer. I co-own a sports-specific retail shop in Washington State. And in 2019, we became a Shopify Plus customer, which if you haven't used Shopify Plus, it's their enterprise version of the platform, and one where they actually provide a lot of enterprise support. So it was actually quite a pleasure to go through the onboarding process with that. And when the pandemic hit in March, our business was adversely affected by the pandemic. We went from really strong revenues to about 5% of normal, which obviously had an impact on the business. And after contacting Shopify with some ideas on how they could help us, they actually came back with additional ways where they could support us that were beyond what I had asked for. So it's one thing to be able to work with a business and work with a great product, but when you have a business who actually understands your situation and is able to help you beyond that, it's something even more special that you don't see in a lot of businesses or business relationships. So I'm super excited to bring Michael on. He's the retention lead at Shopify, has a ton of great knowledge of not only his role, but obviously a lot of things that happens within the business there at Shopify. They've been on a huge growth trajectory over the last kind of 5 years. They keep on hitting new highs from a growth standpoint. Just when you think they've hit the limit, they come out with a new surprise, whether that's opening warehouses for their customers or improving the product platform that they've got. So pretty excited to have Michael here joining us today to talk about ways of measuring the intrinsic value of your targets. Michael, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Wow, what a nice introduction. I was not expecting such a flattering introduction. Thank you, Tom.
Oh, look, happy to have you here. And as I said, I don't think I've shared that story with you, but it's always kind of nice to be able to work with a business and also have contacts there like yourself. And even though, you know, we've had a relationship, that never came into Shopify's decision in the support that they gave us. So I think that's why it's even more special, because I didn't have to lean on anyone to get that support and outcome. It just happened because you guys are a strong business, and obviously, you know, you're a part of that. So we're super excited to have you, and I'll let you kind of fill in the gaps on your experience and your journey to Canada and Shopify.
Yeah, thank you. So so actually, I started with studying actually AI before it was a hype. So there was a course in the Netherlands where I joined, and so yeah, I think like my background is quite solid in terms of data science and AI kind of thing. But then I transitioned over time more to a text mining related field, and then I entered a SaaS domain. I worked for actually a Shopify competitor right now in Germany. It's called Jimdo.com for over 5 years. And then I moved to Canada with, as Tom said, like with my whole family. And we really enjoy it here. So the domain space has been actually quite similar. Like SaaS companies, we want to enable entrepreneurs, and as you all like, yeah, as Tom highlights, like there's a really diversified entrepreneurship out there, you know, like, and what I do in my daily business as a retention lead is like really to find like, okay, where are verticals where we can actually improve our product, and what kind of requirements do they need, and how do we surface this and retain them and make them also successfully with their business at the end of the day. So Shopify is actually like a complete win-win game for entrepreneurs and for us as well. So we definitely position ourselves on the merchant side. Right. Shall I start the presentation or?
Go for it.
Yeah.
And you can share your screen if you like.
Yeah. And also like don't hold back if you have questions.
Yes, good point. So everyone, please feel free to ask questions. We have a smaller crowd joining us. We wanted to keep intimate so that everyone could ask their questions. So feel free to ask your questions either by just asking it, or let us know your questions in the chat and we ask it for you.
I think I installed Zoom and it requires to restart Zoom. So I might hop off. No, or can you see my screen?
We could see, yeah. We can see.
Then it's perfect. Yeah, then it's all good. So, great. So, and today is the first spring day in Ottawa, so I'm super excited. That's why I put some flowers in the background. So this talk will be about target audience evaluation, and this is a topic which is handy like when you either have a business or you work in marketing or you work as a data person that deals with marketing. And so in this domain space, basically, this topic lives. And I'm gonna explain, we have an introduction already done, so I skipped this. If you want to contact me, I think like on LinkedIn is probably the best one, how we can get together. Also a little bit adds that we are hiring for all types of people, and either go through the Shopify job board or contact me, and I can give you some additional background on Shopify and for what kind of roles we are looking for. So now it's actually the use case that I want to address. So as a data person, so I spent like 10 years in data in a SaaS domain, and I dealt a lot with marketing. And what I notice is that marketing, so the people that work in marketing, they really like to define a target audience, and they say like, okay, those people need this kind of value proposition. Those people, my target audience, need this kind of messaging and so on. So this is a common pattern that exists, that marketing people really like targeted communication. And if you look at Facebook, you can really define really narrowed, like to which kind of audience you want to pitch your campaign. And yeah, so it makes sense. They have all the tools. Marketing have a lot of tools available for making this kind of targeted approach. But there's one thing which is quite commonly underestimated and basically overseen from my personal point of view. And it's basically measuring the intrinsic value of your target. And this basically means, would they convert anyhow, your target group, or do they convert because of your message and of your value proposition? And I'm gonna show you a method on how you can separate those two things. What is the value of your message or value proposition, and what is the value, the intrinsic value of your target audience? So you can really give those two groups like different kind of values. So with Shopify, we have like, I just took some example use cases here. A potential target audience would be aspirational merchants or existing merchants or entrepreneurs. Like you could think like as a marketer, you would give them a different kind of messaging. Like existing merchants might look more on operational optimization, so a different kind of message. And for aspirational merchants, they might need some more guidance. So I think like from my point of view, like this could be like valid marketing hypothesis that you want to customize to your audience, like different kind of messaging to audience. And we can also pitch our messaging over multiple channels as well. So there's a kind of a conditioning happening as well. So we can pitch within our product or using some marketing channels, Facebook, and so on. Like, just want to highlight as well to be mindful on some treatments. Yeah. So when I say treatments, it's basically the action here that I. So in an experimental setup, a treatment is basically an action that I want to pitch to my audience. So this is what I mean by treatment. I just want to be mindful that depending on your treatment, you see difference in terms of costs, and you see a difference in terms of when you get actually feedback. As an example, we have here feedback time and here some cost. You can promote monetary incentives, and for Shopify, it would be, for example, a discount code, for example, or like you get some app credit, something monetary. You can, so depending on how big the value is, you have a range of how expensive it is, but usually you get fast feedback. The approach that we are doing here is also applicable if you deal with sales teams. So sales teams, due to nature, are usually quite costly, like so they are at the higher end, but then also like depending on how many touch points they have, and the conversion actually can be quite delayed, and this should be considered in your experimental setup. This is basically highlighting all kind of development resources. So basically when you remove friction in some ways. And yeah. So this is incomplete, but it just should highlight the fact that there's a cost component to your treatment, and as well a feedback time. And if we go now to an experimental setup, and it would be determined only by marketing, it would probably look like this. So marketing determines who's my target group. And I guess we all know what an A/B test is. So we split our target group in a treatment group. This is group A, this is group B. We run A/B test, and the group in control, for example, they don't see any messages. And the group in the treatment, they see the message and the value prop. And depending on what kind of treatment we launch, we measure the feedback and get the difference in conversion rate, for example. When the difference is quite big, we can conclude that we are quite confident or that it's significant, and our treatment produced an uplift on this target group. So now data usually comes into play, and they decide, okay, they advertise for an A/B test actually to make it actually a causal relationship. Now there's one. So this is actually measuring, is my treatment producing an uplift on this target group? So this is all cool. Like when we run A/B tests in such a manner, we measure, is the treatment outperforming our control group on this target group? And that's actually the treatment problem definition. So we have now a value for our treatment conditioned when we send it to our target audience group. But there's a miss out opportunity. And this is basically addressing what would happen if we send the treatment to someone else that is not in our target group. Maybe our assumptions of treatment tied to this target group is not optimal. And what I've seen in the past is, for example, I was dealing with proactive support, and we were looking, okay, people that have a high propensity to succeed with a product get a proactive support. So we were, our target group were actually people that have a high propensity to succeed, and our treatment was proactive support. And what I saw there, so we had like all this theory around it, and we were launching an A/B test on this, and actually the incremental value was actually not that great, but there was another sweet spot of this proactive support, and namely the opposite side, like people that had like a really, really bad propensity, they actually needed proactive support in order to create an uplift. So it was really counterintuitive, actually, what we have seen. And this is, so I saw this actually a couple of times, that if you launch a miss out opportunity test, that you come with the opposite conclusion at the end, that that we are biased in some way, and that we, So we want to know, like, is this pair of treatment and target really optimal? And is there maybe a more optimal pair of treatment that we have not identified? And how do we do this? And here, this is the solution. We basically extend our A/B test by a group that is not part of the target, or it can be a random group or not the target group. And we expose there as well the treatment, and we run a control as well on those group. So let's say we target aspirational entrepreneurs with a certain value proposition. Then we would also target, doesn't have to be 50-50 all those quadrants, or like equally weighted, but then we would target as well like a random group, giving them the same value proposition, and see if there's really the same difference as we would see here. So basically we randomize, instead of randomizing the treatment, which is cool for treatment effect, we randomize a bit our audience here and give them the same exposure. So this is the key idea here. And this is actually quite new. It's really simple actually, but I think like it's 6 or 5 years old when it was published. And I'm actually really surprised that it's not really established within marketing yet. So this kind of thinking. I would call it basically, this is what is the intrinsic value of the target group? We can measure it. And this is the problem of target groups. One example here. So what do we see here? We have here treatment. There we send our value proposition. We have a control group. We do nothing. We have here our a target group can be determined by a model, like a machine learning model, something. And this is our random population. Now we want to measure, let's say we want to do a normal A/B test. We want to measure the treatment effect. Then we would compare those two, AB group. Yeah. So this is our treatment effect. We have, so this is our standard from marketing defined A/B test. So they define the target, we give them the treatment, some people don't get the treatment, and the difference is our average treatment effect. Now we add with a random population, we give them the same treatment, and half of those guys from the random population don't get the treatment. And we have an average treatment effect on a random population. Now, what would happen when the average treatment effect on the random population would be bigger than on this one? This would tell us that the combination of treatment and target is not optimal, because on a random population, we get higher incremental values actually. Yeah. And yeah, so this is basically then a big miss out opportunity for the marketing campaign if they only narrow on a really specific target audience. But outside, if you would address the same message on a bigger audience, it would have, first of all, like a bigger effect, like we would get higher incrementality. And as well, it would increase our TAM, or like addressable audience actually. So those are the two things that are under the umbrella of miss out opportunity. So when this is a situation that is really happening, that random, like the average treatment effect of a random population is really, really big, outperforming the target audience, then you have a big miss out opportunity there.
Hey, Michael, quick question on that. So
yeah,
how does Shopify deal with that these days? So if you see that there's a clear miss out opportunity, do you take that back to the team and say, hey, look, we need to revise the test, or do you see it through to completion?
Yeah, so from my personal point of view, like I really like to have another test to validate those things, because sometimes you have really small random groups here that you want to test. So I think like testing multiple times makes sense. So this is what I would advertise. And as well, if you have a data person, you should dig deeper and to find a sweet spot. There might be some audience or like some people that have certain attributes or a certain characteristic where this resonates really, really well. And then you can use this for further hypothesis testing, meaning that you adjust your treatment to those guys that really respond well. And then you launch a test again. And depending on the costs that are involved with your treatment, you find different kind of sweet spot levels. Let's say when you have a sales team, you want to make sure that you see ROI there. It's generally more costly to have a sales team than sending an email campaign to everyone, and like so this is like the trade-off that I see there. Like so on an email campaign that can go to everyone, like it's not so costly. So there I would rather go for high TAM. And when you deal with something which is costly, like a sales team, you want to go for a small TAM where you know, like, okay, you get ROI as well. You want to get some precision there in the outcome there. Oh. So now what we have seen here is, so when we do this kind of calculation, this is what I was mentioning. When this is positive, so let's say we have a conversion rate, and if A minus B is still bigger as C minus D, so when this is positive, we know that we have found like a really good treatment and target group combination. So then it's a good matching pair. This here is addressing the intrinsic value of our target group. And both guys, they saw the same treatment. And here they didn't see a treatment. And this is a way how we can measure basically what is the intrinsic value of your target group, because they will naturally convert with this kind of rate or differently. Yeah. So this is the intrinsic value of your target group. Well, let's say when you have experienced entrepreneurs here and new entrepreneurs, and they will convert with so they don't see anything, but they will convert to Shopify with the 10% rate, and those guys will convert with a 1% rate. Then the intrinsic value of the group would be the difference here. So we know that existing entrepreneurs, they will convert without any interfering from Shopify, they would convert with a higher rate than new merchants. Yeah, here's another example. So this is our target group. We see here when we, the average treatment effect, the difference is 0.2 for both groups. This means when we see something like this, that it's actually not a great combination. The miss out opportunity is actually quite big. We can actually run the same treatment on a bigger group, on a random population, because we see here the same average treatment effect on both groups. Here we see as well that the intrinsic value of the groups is the same. So the difference is 4, like, doesn't make so much sense to split here. There's another example, and here we have a propensity model, and the higher basically means the higher we see a conversion. And what I see quite often when we have like targeted experiments or targeted, when we have multiple targets and they got exposed to the same treatment, marketing really likes to focus on the highest conversion rate. So what they will do when they see something like this, what tends to happen is like, okay, we need to expose this kind of treatment to all the people that have a propensity score above 60. So because we see on average a 3.5% conversion rate, and which is absolutely the highest out of the whole table. So this is all true. But if we look at where does the treatment contributes the highest value, and the treatment is related to the cost, like you have a sales team, you have maybe discounts. So when you want to measure the value of the treatment and where the treatment has the highest value, it's actually happening here. Here, the difference of treatment and control on this segment is actually 2%. And this is attributed to the treatment. And here, it's simply the combination of treatment and target group. But the treatment is only giving 1% additional. Do I make sense? Okay.
Yes. It's clear. Very brilliant.
Yeah. So what we have done is actually we blow up a bit our experimental design by adding some randomness to the target group. But it helps us really to distinguish what is the effect for the treatment and what is the intrinsic value of our target group. So I hope this, So when we see something like this and we have a cost on the treatment, I would definitely recommend like, okay, here we are really most cost efficient with our treatment because we have here the highest incremental value of our treatment.
Michael, we've got a question here from Sophie Lapointe. Sophie, would you like to jump in and ask your question with any and add any context that you have?
Yes, I was looking at these numbers and I was wondering if instead of doing a difference, like one minus the other, if it wouldn't make sense to do a ratio of one over the other to see how much better one is performing. For example, 2.5 over 0.5 is 5 times better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this makes absolute sense, like to promote their relative difference, I guess. Yeah, I agree.
And I guess it makes sense to actually take into account the cost of the treatment versus control, and of course the reward you get, because sometimes the value of people who are, say, more than 60 might be more than 35 to 60. So it's a whole equation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's also the question, like on which end you want to optimize. Usually you want to optimize on the treatment. So there, what I just said, I think makes sense. But if you want to optimize on the acquisition side, on a marketing point of view, for them, it makes totally sense to buy more people that are in this segment. If they can tap on those people and they can target them with Facebook, definitely get them in. Like they have a really good conversion rate here. So it doesn't mean like you stop marketing spend there, but it's independent. Like they have a really strong intrinsic value. They will convert naturally.
True.
Yeah.
So I guess it really depends on the goal of the
exactly.
campaign.
Yeah. All right. So this is the inventor, like Victor Lowe. He does more of this kind of stuff. So if you are really interested in this domain field, like he's definitely the guru to follow on that one. Yeah. There's one downside to slicing your experiment. And that's actually, or maybe like a small guessing game. Does someone know where I'm hitting here?
No.
Okay. It's called the Simpsons paradox.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. And this is like the bridge that I can remember it. It has nothing to do with Homer Simpson or the Simpsons, but it's just something when you start slicing things, you can end up with quite surprising results. So let's say we have here an A/B test and we look on aggregate. We see that, okay, wow, the treatment group outperforms our control group. But now we start slicing it. And this is something what we do with a random population, for example. Or like when we look at mobile versus desktop conversion rates. So those are common slices, for example, that we see. What happens here is that treatment all of a sudden doesn't outperform any more control group. So 80% here, smaller than 90%, 30% is smaller than 50%. But on aggregate, we end up with the opposite. So 62 was outperforming 54. So this is a situation that actually happens quite frequently to me somehow. And the reason why this is happening is because you have an imbalance of your segmentation within test and control. So there are two things, like treatment works really well on one segment of your group. There you have a really strong signal, and you have an imbalance of this one. So we see here 250 people are female in the treatment group and 40 females are in control. So it's quite imbalanced. And yeah. So then this can happen. And yeah, usually you would say like, okay, I want to control for this kind of things. But in reality, it's, yeah, you can oversee this kind of things easily. Yeah. And then it becomes really funny to communicate this kind of paradox to management, actually. Like this is a big mission.
I can imagine the conversation.
Yeah.
It needs a couple of beers, I guess.
Right. So a quick summary, or maybe something that I just remind to Sophie's comment. So when you do, for example, in experimental setup, like p-value, for example, is it's like a standard tool, I would say. And p-value looks always at the absolute difference. So it looks at average treatment effect, which is like the average of treatment minus the average of control. And definitely you can make it relative, but I think like just how the p-value works, it looks at the absolute one. And I think like that's why those numbers were doing A minus B, for example. Summing up, so there's a tool that we can actually measure the intrinsic value of our audience. And we can also separate it from the intrinsic value of our treatment. So those are two different things. It's quite common that those things get mingled up, and then you actually come with wicked results. So you spend your money different or wrongly on the wrong side of things, and it can be that you optimize on something that is not there. Yeah.
Fantastic.
You mentioned
so much.
Michael, earlier. So when you see a result that is contrary to the intended result, and you determine some bias in there, do you find that that's a difficult kind of conversation as well, or do you find that your teams are accepting of that now as you guys roll this out across different campaigns?
Yeah, I think like it depends really on the maturity of testing that you have within the company. So people that have seen this kind of behavior before, they react way differently, like when people are seeing it for the first time. I think like it really depends on those kind of maturity of testing maturity within the company. I think like it's even like if you see those kind of ghost phenomenons, it shouldn't stop you to keep on testing. I think the whole game should be like to get awesome velocity of testing. Like it should be really fast, and then you see multiple things similar to this. And then you simply get used to it. And I think like one way to mitigate those things is like when people are still bullish on this kind of test, like to repeat it, and then controlling on the things where you haven't controlled before. So it really depends, like, are people still believing in this kind of treatment and on this kind of test? Because like in reality, like when you have like a really fast moving company, things that, like are important a couple of months or weeks ago, like doesn't have to be important right now. Like, like it can change really fast. And
And we've had a lot of change, obviously, over the last year. You look at, just the adoption of technology in many areas has increased exponentially. Has that, made the model, more difficult to translate, or the results of the model more difficult to translate? Because, marketing in March, April, May of last year was completely off the charts compared to what we've ever seen, previously, right? More people were at home, searching in different ways. Everyone had more time on their hands. The necessity to convert wasn't always there as well. So how does that play a part in this model? Can you account for that?
Yeah, this is a good question. To be honest, like I haven't so much, but I agree with you that what was happening is a big disruptor in everything what we have seen. And actually it should, so from my point of view, like it should basically challenge all our existing knowledge, what we have so far, for retest. Like, is it still valid, our belief of the system that we are operating? Like, because I'm like, yeah, because it's so disruptive for the times that we are right now. Like,
Excellent. I'll go back to the audience. Are there any questions for Michael from the audience that you'd like to jump in on?
Maybe while we're waiting, you talk about testing fast. What testing fast means to you? How big of sample size do you typically testing on? Because what this sounds like is kind of a grid search on segments. So how do you do with low sample size?
Yeah, so it really depends also like in what kind of, or like, look, this is my point of view, right? Like I cannot speak here for Shopify on this one. I think like there's more in a SaaS domain, it's not a problem when you get false discoveries, I would say, or like positive false discoveries. Like it's in a medical domain, like a lot of A/B testing comes actually from from a medical domain, and there they want to be really, really strictly certain that there's a positive effect and nobody gets killed, and like that things actually work as they should work. I would say in many SaaS domains, this kind of constraint can be relaxed. And what I mean by this is like, we don't need an alpha of 5%. I think like wanna go on power. And this means basically you want to detect smaller experiments or like smaller effects, but it's based on a sacrifice. Like you get also a couple of false discoveries more, like that you think like you're on a winning track, but in reality, there's no difference. So I'm personally more in favor of this kind of things, especially in the SaaS domain, because there's barely any downside for the false discovery part. It's more a downside when I miss out the opportunity that something really works and I haven't been able to detect this. This is from my point of view, like the bigger downside. And regarding sample size, there's another cool trick. The guys from Yandex, it's worth to check them out. They have like own websites around experimental designs, and Yandex has a similar but quite different problem. So Yandex is like the website like google.com for Russia. And they want to test, they have like, I think 1,000 engineering teams or 1,000 people, a couple of, they all want to test on this simple page where you type your search query and you hit enter. Every dev person wants to test there. So they have only this one spot where everyone wants to test. So the sample size becomes actually also quite small because of that. So what they came up with is actually having some machine learning prediction model that looks at solid variables of a user and what is their expected utility of Yandex. And they calibrate based on this one. And what they do is they reduce by this the variance. And this is how they can test. I think they reported three times faster or on 3 times smaller audience in order to detect the small average treatment effect. I like those Yandex people. They are really innovative in terms of experimental designs, I would say. And especially with this case of smaller samples, and
especially in medical, in medicine, it's a big problem as well. There's tons of literature on that. I haven't seen them being applied in marketing yet, but probably there's potential there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, we got one from James McDonald. James, do you want to jump in?
Hey guys, sure, yeah. I'm just trying to, I'm just wondering if you could provide like a practical example of setting up such a test in your experience with Shopify. In my business, we sell products direct to consumer, lots of Facebook ads, Google ads, but we struggle with like the source data and ensuring that we can like set up the test correctly. And then finally with attribution, like I was trying to, as you were talking through this, I was like trying to figure out like how you would set such a test up with Shopify. Like, do you start with maybe like leads and like email data where you know if they're a experienced or new merchant on your program, email them, and then you use that information on your like prospecting to target the right people, or how do you go about that? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Clear.
So let's say you have already like let's say your aim is really for conversion, right? And you have already a bunch of emails and you want to message them, I don't know, a promotion, right? Like, so basically it requires that you have as well a set of attributions to your leads, meaning that you can segment them and you have something which says, okay, this promotion works only on this kind of lead type. So you need this kind of thing. And this could be, for example, on the email address, you can look, okay, all the Gmail people maybe convert better on this kind of promotion. Or if you see business names in the after the ad, you know, like this kind of segmentation, I think like you can do with email data. And that you send, different kind of promotions there. So this is the hypothesis that you build. And now what I'm arguing, you have in your mind, basically you have this promotion and this segment. You think like it works really well, but I'm saying like, okay, put this promotion also to a random segment. And it doesn't have to be everyone, but just like a small sample maybe. And look if you really see that your hypothesis is correct on that one. So all the Gmail people will convert on your promotion where you advertise the Gmail plugin, for example, with your direct to consumer. But then maybe there are some people that are on Yahoo or, you know, like, and they need simply to be aware that Gmail exists and they would maybe convert, you know, like you see some really funky dynamics sometimes if you send the same promotion to a random population. Maybe they will get the Gmail address and then convert as well to you. I hope it doesn't sound too esoteric what I just said, like, but it's, I think like you addressed the question, what kind of attributes exist there? How do you should do segmentation? Or maybe if you have something more concrete, I can adjust it maybe.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking in your situation here. So you have all these merchants and they're customers of yours. So you know if they're, you know, they just started a Shopify store and they're not making that much money, or they've had a store for years and they're making tons of money, right? So then from that, is that how you would, like, I guess that's how you get your data, and you could segment new versus experienced, and then say you're sending them a Shopify Plus promotion or something, and then you'd segment them in that way on email, and then from this data, then you would determine the messaging that you're going to use on Facebook ads or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like from my point of view, like this is mixing a bit too much. But for example, when your team's aim is like really making the shop successful, and you have, for example, a tool available, and this could be, okay, who gets personal support now? There could be multiple hypotheses which are all true. Like people that are super engaged, they need additional help. People that are not engaged, maybe they need additional help because they are not engaged anymore. Or you can say people that are already on Shopify Plus, because they are Plus, they get this, you know, like, so those are all valid arguments that exist from my point of view. Usually within the team dynamic, one stands out and everyone is like really bullish around this one. And I'm saying like, okay, try also the other arguments. Even like from today's point of view, it doesn't make sense. Give proactive support to a bigger audience. See if it works really as expected. And basically you expect basically it doesn't work on the bigger audience. Then it's, you know, like wasted a bit of audience, like our proactive support money, but at least you have certainty around this one, that you didn't went in this miss out opportunity trap.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good example. I always think just about the conversion selling. So
yeah. And I think like this is a method this is really applicable for sales team, for support, for marketing, definitely, like or even like for feature development, like when you product, or like product designs as well. Like it takes a bit creativity to get to it, I think, but I think this method is applicable for all those kind of things.
Cool. Yeah, no, the model makes sense. I was just trying to put it into practical context. I downloaded your the True Lift model paper, so
Oh yeah,
I'm sold. Thank you.
maybe
fun.
worth. Oh,
I was like, have fun with the paper. Go ahead.
I think just to highlight a little bit, the story actually just starts here, right? So we have now a method on evaluating based on your target. When we extend this kind of story, we can also have machine learning models that defines potential targets. And then when we go in this space, it's called actually uplift modeling. And also this person that I just referred, basically, when you look at this from 2016 onwards, the paper basically it goes around uplift modeling, and there it's basically up to the machine to decide who is really responsive to your treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically, yeah.
It becomes the cost function of the machine, I guess, the machine learning model, kind of.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Any further questions for Michael before we wrap things up?
No questions.
Okay.
Let me do the announcement. Apologies. So again, one of our speakers, Lloyd, they are hiring crazy. I didn't know that Shopify does hiring crazy now as well. Please check out both Shopify and Boast AI. They are looking for a lot of talent. And next week, next time we're gonna have Ali telling us about predicting new market values using ML. He works for Twitter, and he's gonna be telling us how they use these methodologies to find where they should put their money in.
Excellent. And just another company that's I know looking for numerous data roles, Best Buy, which is based here in Vancouver, Canada. The Canadian division is also looking for, I think, about a half dozen data specific roles from analysts to data scientists. So if you're in the hunt, lots of opportunities out there. And these days you can work from anywhere. So location is a lot less important.
And if you want, feel free to contact us. We can make introductions for you guys.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Michael, once again for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on board, and really enjoyed the discussion today. And then for everyone else who joined us to learn, thanks again for coming. And we'll have announcements on the upcoming sessions coming out within the next few weeks. Thanks for coming, everyone.